You know, the more I hear about the post office scandal, the sicker I feel. It is abhorrent. It is truly sickening to know what happened to ordinary people and that they were allowed to be treated this way by their own employers, no less, because it was the post office that brought these prosecutions, not the Crime Prosecution Service. And I think this should be the reason why the ability to conduct its own prosecution should be taken away from the post office. Now, there's also an interesting argument here about Keir Starmer's lack of involvement in stopping this miscarriage of justice, because during this time he was the head of the CPS, the Crime Prosecution Service. And people are saying, well, why didn't Keir Starmer stop it? And the counter argument to that is, well, he was head of the CPS, so they didn't really deal with it. But again, as head of the CPS, he could have stepped in. Having done my research, the CPS can override any post office prosecutions. Now, staggeringly, only 93 of the 700 plus postmasters have had their convictions overturned. Now, this is a huge scandal. It's disgusting, it's shocking, it's everything. But why on earth has it taken a TV drama on ITV to make the people at the top take notice? And there was a question on a radio talk show today. Is it time to overturn the convictions? These convictions should have been overturned yesterday, the week before, years ago. It should never have happened. People took their own lives. People have been bankrupted. People have had their reputations completely rubbed into the dirt. Their kids being spat at school while being taunted by others saying your mummy or daddy stole money from people's life savings, and it wasn't true, obviously. So there's huge compensation to be dished out here. And quite frankly, I think it should come from post office profits and Fujitsu. Now, Fujitsu are the Japanese company who invented or dished out the Horizon accounting system. And they've kind of been in the sidelines here. No one's looked at them, but I think they are as much to blame as the people at the top of the post office who knew that there was something wrong with the system, and yet they allowed this massive miscarriage of justice. So by the post office conducting its own prosecutions, it was effectively allowed to brush all this under the carpet, and that's why this unique ability should be stripped from them. Now, the ideal scenario would be for Paula Venables to be stripped of her CBE, Commander of the British Empire, gong. She and others should be in the dock, charged, prosecuted. They should be in jail, in my opinion, for what's happened. And they should be all financially ruined. And whatever assets they have should be given to the victims. The punishment here should be really harsh. It should be unusual, because these people need to be made an example of. And this is what happens, folks, when you employ people who are into marketing, and that's what Paula Venables was. Her background was marketing, so she was brought in as head of the post office, and yet her only concern was the brand, and that's what marketers do. Completely unqualified for the job. Now, like I mentioned earlier, it's taken a TV series for people at the top to take notice, and they seem to be dragging their heels on exonerating all these innocent people. Like I said, 93 of them have had their convictions quashed. The rest of them, they've had their appeals rejected, even though this is proven to be the system's fault, the post office's fault. So why the hell are they dragging their heels? Well, it's going to take an act of parliament, or even more extraordinary, the king himself could step in. After all, didn't she step in to stop Paul Burrell, Diana's butler, for being convicted? So in that respect, quash all convictions now, get Parliament to sit down, make it an act, or maybe King Charles can make himself useful for a change and step in, because he is effectively the crown. And when you're being prosecuted in this country, it's the crown versus you. And then after all these people have been exonerated, pay them off, give them a shitload of money. It shouldn't really be taxpayers, because this is, after all, a private company's mess. And so give them all the post office profits and whatever you can get out of Fujitsu. Now, in my previous video regarding this, I talked about Paula Venables and her role in this mess. But another name being banged about is Ed Davey. Now, Ed Davey is the leader of the Liberal Democrats. And just like Paul Reynolds, he has stayed completely silent on the whole affair. Now, for those of you who don't know, around this time it was Ed Davey who was the Minister of Postal Affairs. Now, he was approached by Mr. Bates, and Mr. Bates is the former post office employee who was holding all this together. Now, he was approached numerous times by Mr. Bates to discuss the whole palaver, but he refused every time, saying a meeting with him would make no difference. Now, there's a few questions here, because Mr. Bates did say to him, if he doesn't deal with this and speak to him, then the whole thing could spiral into something much worse and could cost the taxpayer a shitload of money in compensation, and it's heading that way, just as Mr. Bates predicted. And so, being the Minister for Postal Affairs, why didn't Ed Davey look into this? Now, he says he was misled by those at the top of the post office. However, why didn't he look at it himself? Why did he take the post office's explanation at face value? Because they said that the Horizon accounting system was foolproof, and he just believed them. Now, surely as an MP, you would look at both sides of the story, but the guy didn't. And why didn't he, and others for that matter, question why 700 employees had allegedly committed the same fraud crime? It is obviously quite impossible for 700 people all over the country to be in on the same scam. And why didn't they check their bank accounts? Now, surely, if these people were thieving from their employers, they would have transferred that money into their bank accounts. And some even offered to show their bank accounts, but they didn't accept it. The money went missing and they wanted scapegoats. And yet to this day, no one has explained where that money has gone. And so as an educated man and as an MP in his role as a minister, why the hell didn't Ed Davey ask these questions and act accordingly? Now, he has been asked numerous times to apologise to the victims of this post office mess for refusing to even acknowledge their pleas for help. And he has always refused. Now, this is the guy who keeps saying that he's going to clean up politics. Now, in my opinion, this is a massive dereliction of duty. It is clear to me, and it should be clear to you, that Ed Davey is in politics for Ed Davey. Because if Ed Davey really was a man of the people, and by the way, when you have higher educated middle class twits like him in politics, they have absolutely nothing in common with people like you and I, and they shouldn't be representing us. And this is the same guy, by the way, who has made regular calls for public figures to resign from major public offices. Now, so far, since April 2019, he has called for 31 people to resign for dereliction of duty. Now, these people include Boris Johnson, Richard Sharp, Dominic Cummings, the Board of Thames Water, etc. The list goes on, always calling for people to resign. And now I think it's time for Ed Davey to take a look in the mirror, because after this, I doubt he'll last a month before he stands down as leader of the Lib Dems. He can't survive this. This scandal is too great, and he was amongst it. And talking about out-of-touch people, Vince Cable, fellow Lib Dem, now he has defended Ed Davey, and he says that Paula Reynolds should not hand back her CBE. Remember, Vince Cable was part of the Lib Dems, which sold out and joined the Tories in a coalition government with David Cameron, I think at the time, back in 2010. So, yeah, that should tell you absolutely everything about these people. They're in it for the money, they're in it for themselves, and they don't give two figs about people like you and I. And I sincerely hope that all the victims of the post office scandal, they are exonerated, paid off handsomely, and that those in the know who allowed this to happen, they are prosecuted to the full extent of the law. And there we go, that's what I think. I'm Paz49. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time. Roger Trout.